The 2023 Millrose Games did not disappoint, with 11 national records and tons of exciting races. And while there were no records in the men's 60, it ended up being one of the most talked about events of the entire meet. This felt like it would have been a very fitting video to break out my vest for my time back in the day as a track and field official when I was probably the youngest one there by about half a century. But I couldn't find it, probably buried in a closet somewhere. But I'll quit stalling, let's get straight to it. By now, I'm sure you know that Christian Coleman won the men's 60-meter race at the Millrose Games running 6:47. Even immediately following the race, I started seeing a lot of comments on the internet from people who saw that Christian Coleman beat Noah Lyles, but then they went and checked in the results and didn't see a time for Lyles. First off, that meant you weren't watching live, and if you're a track fan and you're not watching it in the rare instances that it's on TV, get your shit together. Second, I got you covered because I knew this was coming and I made sure to grab his time before it got erased from the official results. So let's start digging into the series of events that led to all of that. The men's 60 had a very chaotic start straight from the jump. High school football / track star phenom Nicholas Harbor was a late add to this field and what was easily the highest profile race of his life up to this point, and it looked like, understandably, the nerves got to him a little bit. And you can't really blame him as a teenager, lining up with two world champions to his left, one of which being the fastest man ever in the history of this event. As the men got into the blocks for the first time in what would end up being 3 attempts at this, you could see that Harbor was never really set, with his knees moving as the rest of the field rose, and immediately began falling forward out of the blocks. To his credit, a very smart heads-up move to raise his hand and avoid what would have been a very blatant false start. Though, as Otto said cheekily on the broadcast, usually you want to raise your hand before you flinch. But the officials showed the green card right away, so it was game on for attempt number 2. You saw it right away this time as they got up into the blocks the second time around that Noah Lyles was not as steady as the first time, and Otto called it out immediately, saying lots of flinching by Noah. And you can see it right away in his body language as Noah Lyles started walking back to the blocks that he knew it as well. As the slow-mo replays came up and Otto started breaking it down, it was pretty clear that unfortunately for the second week in a row, a Lyles brother would be shown a red card in a 60-meter race following Josephus's DQ in Boston. And boy, did the crowd not like what was coming next. Before it had even been raised and the official began walking onto the track with the red card down by her side, boos and chants of "Let him run! Let him run" began loudly from the stands. Now, Noah Lyles deserves a ton of credit here for maintaining his composure and calmly walking over to the official immediately. Watching live, it was a very short interaction. It was just about 8 or 9 seconds with Lyles standing next to interacting with the official before he turned around right away and started walking back towards the blocks. And in his post-race interview, he revealed that the official actually asked him if he wanted to run under protest, and of course Lyles was going to take that opportunity. After the race, talking about, he said what we all know to be true, and that for elite athletes, the indoor season is basically the equivalent of the NFL preseason. Not really a major priority, more important in terms of maximizing those opportunities to work on their development in specific elements of their race that they're trying to improve. So regardless of whether or not he would have an official time, it was still extremely important to him that he got the chance to make this trip count. Now, I think this is where this starts to get particularly confusing for 99% of the people out there, which is understandable because you have way better ways to spend your time than reading through hundreds of pages of competition manuals. But seeing as I have, I've got some knowledge bombs I can drop on you. Now, I am not going to pretend that I am the world's foremost expert around all of this, and I feel pretty strongly that I've got it right, but if I don't, feel free to let me know in the comments so we can get to the bottom of this. But I believe in this case, I can help add some clarity to what appears to be a lot of inconsistency and confusion around the track false starts. There have been some recent and very high-profile occurrences of this recently in some international competitions. Of course, there's the now world-famous Devon Allen incident at the World Championships in Eugene, as well as back-to-back false starts for British sprinter this indoor season, which I posted about earlier. And as Otto pointed out on the broadcast, as Lyles walked back from his brief conversation with the official towards his block, and Otto said, "This is a uniquely American thing," which is 100% accurate, which is one of the really challenging aspects of a sport which doesn't have universal guidance, and the rules can change depending on if it's international competition or one run by a national governing body like USATF. In the World Athletics rules for their competitions, Rule 8.4.1 to be exact, it states, if they are in any doubt, the start referee may allow an athlete to compete under protest, but, and there's a big but coming, competing under protest shall not be allowed if the false start was indicated by a World Athletics certified start information system, unless for any reason the referee determines that the information provided by the system is obviously inaccurate. And so enters the 1/10 rule. I won't get into why that's so controversial right now, that would be a whole dedicated video on its own, but effectively if the timing system shows an athlete's reaction time is faster than 0.100 seconds, then the athlete is disqualified, and according to the World Athletics competition rules, they cannot compete under protest, which is what happened to Devon Allen in Eugene. Now we can get into why this functioned differently at Millrose in New York at the Armory. In the USATF competition rules, Rule 146.4, an immediate oral protest regarding a decision by the starter to charge a false start made by the competitor being charged shall be accepted by the start referee. Great, I love that. 146.4 continues, in order to protect the rights of all concerned and provide the time required to consider all evidence with regard to the charged false start, the competitor shall be allowed the opportunity to compete under protest. Alright, Rule 146.4 is quickly becoming my favorite track and field rule. Though, similar to World Athletics, there is a but, not a big but, maybe a weird but. So, but, unless the evidence of a false start immediately available to the start referee is extremely obvious, in which case, the protest shall be denied. The rule does specify what it means by extremely obvious, in that an extremely obvious false start is a false start visible to the naked eye of a member of the start team and is recognized without doubt. Whew. Okay, this is interesting because it feels a bit like of a pick your poison situation, because by that definition, this can be very subjective. At what point is it determined if a false start is quote unquote visible to the naked eye and recognizable without a doubt? Do you prefer that gray area or the hard line in the sand at that 1/10 of a second rule? Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments. For me, I like that there's some wiggle room here, and even if the time won't count, that USATF is allowing for some flexibility when there are those close calls for an athlete still to get a chance to compete under protest. And importantly, Rule 146.4 is one of the rules which received an update for 2023 and some changes after USATF's previous annual meeting. The update being officials will provide guidance for allowing athletes to run under protest after a charged false start. Okay, now is everything starting to click for you? Remember what I told you a minute ago? In his post-race interview after the race, Noah Lyles said that when he approached the official, that the official asked him if he wanted to race under protest. Alright, my mind's settled. USATF Rule 146.4 is now officially my favorite track rule. Because here's the deal. Yes, it is a responsibility of every athlete to understand the rules of the sport they're competing in. Yet, as you can tell by this video alone, it's complicated. And I'm sure it's already hard enough to follow this video alone, which is only about 2 rules governing one specific situation in this sport. Put yourself in the shoes of someone like Noah Lyles, Devon Allen, Asher Phillip, or any of the number of athletes who have been through this situation before. Now think about how hard it was for you to follow this video from the comfort of your own home. Imagine how difficult it would be to remember all of this and process it in real time when your heart rate is going through the roof, your nerves are going wild, and now you're being disqualified from this moment that you spent weeks, months, and years dedicating your life to preparing for. I know I wouldn't be able to handle it. I'd be throwing a temper tantrum, screaming and crying like a child. I would not be able to handle it with the type of composure of these incredible humans we see have to go through this live on national television. What I like most about this rule implemented by USATF, it is a positive step forward in protecting athletes who are very vulnerable in these situations. Regardless on where you stand on the nuances of it, which may ultimately overrule any attempt to run under protest, this empowers the officials to be proactive and take the initiative for presenting this to the athlete and giving them the best possible opportunity to compete. At the end of the day, this is a net positive, albeit just for USATF competition rules. Which brings us full circle to the race results, which after seeing some of the comments of people on the internet criticizing Noah Lyles, presenting it as a bad race result and he got humbled, that's all nonsense. The fastest man in this event in world history won this race, the world record holder. Our expectation for Noah Lyles have been raised, and rightfully so. The better you get, the higher expectations, as it should be. We just saw this man run 6:51, so now as fans, we want more. We always do. But that 6:53 for Lyles is still the second fastest 60 time he's run in his entire life, and that after all the nerves and insanity and chaos of dealing with not one, but two false start situations. I mean, talk about distractions. The ability for him to still have that type of a race after dealing with all of that really speaks to how far he's come, particularly with the mental development side of the sport, to maintain his composure and still be able to execute at a high level under those circumstances. And when you look at the splits, Noah Lyles was 0.12 seconds behind Christian Coleman at 50 meters. And 0.06 seconds behind at the finish. That gap was closing, and quickly. What a race, what a meet. I absolutely loved watching all of it. I hope this video was somewhat helpful to you and not too confusing to follow. What do you make of all of this and the false start rules? How do you propose we could fix it and make it better? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks again for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything else coming up, and I'll see you next time.